Try to remember your earliest memory. Take a moment. For most people, it lands somewhere around age 3 or 4. A birthday cake with too many candles on it. A fall down a set of stairs. A flash of a room you couldn't draw a floor plan of today, but can somehow still feel. Before that age, there's nothing. Not blackness. Not even fog. Just an absence, as if those years simply didn't happen to you. But they did happen. You were there. You were crawling, then walking. You were hearing your own name for the first time and slowly figuring out what it meant. You were forming opinions about strangers, foods, and bedtime, long before you had the words to explain any of it. So where did all of that go? The easy explanation has always been that babies just don't form memories, that the brain is too young, too unfinished to hold on to experience. But that explanation falls apart the moment you watch a toddler recognize a song they haven't heard in months, or burst into tears at the sight of a doctor's office they only visited once as an infant. Something was being remembered. The real answer for where it goes afterward is far stranger than simple forgetting. At the start of the 20th century, Sigmund Freud gave this gap a name that scientists still use today: infantile amnesia. Freud's explanation came straight from his broader theory of the mind. He believed your earliest years were so loaded with forbidden desires, rivalries, and conflicts that your developing mind sealed them away for protection, like locking a door on a room you'd rather forget existed. It's a dramatic idea. It also doesn't hold up. Here's the problem. Babies aren't repressing scandalous secrets. Most of what a 1-year-old experiences is about as scandalous as a nap schedule. They're forming memories of bottles, blankets, a parent's voice, the texture of a rug. Why would a toddler's mind need to lock any of that away like something shameful? To find the real answer, you have to stop looking at psychology and start looking at biology, specifically at a small structure curled up deep behind each of your ears. It's called the hippocampus, named centuries ago because early anatomists thought its shape resembled a seahorse. Despite the charming name, this is one of the hardest working regions in your brain. Think of it as a filing clerk that sits between your short-term experiences and your long-term memory archive. Every conversation, every new place, every face, all of it passes through the hippocampus first, where it gets tagged, linked to related memories, and slowly filed away for later. In adults, this filing system is relatively stable. New files get added constantly, but the cabinet itself mostly stays put. In infants and toddlers, the cabinet is still being built, and it's being built at a pace it will never reach again. During the first few years of life, your hippocampus produces brand new brain cells faster than at any other point in your entire life. This process is called neurogenesis, literally, the birth of new neurons. Picture thousands of new wires being threaded into a switchboard that's already in use, every single day, each one needing to find its place and connect into the existing circuitry. Here's the question worth sitting with for a second. If the circuits storing your memories are constantly being rewired by an influx of new cells, how long could any of those memories realistically survive? Psychologist Patricia Bauer has spent decades chasing a version of that question. Her work focuses on autobiographical memory, the kind that tells the story of your life, rather than memory for facts, skills, or language. Bauer's studies found that babies as young as 9 months old can remember a specific sequence of actions, like the steps to make a toy work, weeks or even months after seeing it demonstrated just once. So babies aren't memoryless. They're recording constantly, sometimes with impressive accuracy. But Bauer's research also revealed the catch. The younger the child at the time of the experience, the faster that memory faded, and the more easily it could be distorted or overwritten by whatever came afterward. It was less like the memory had been locked in a vault, and more like it had been written on a surface that kept getting resurfaced before the ink could fully dry. For years, that's roughly where the story stalled. Researchers could describe the pattern in detail, but not fully explain why the youngest brains were the leakiest of all. Then, in 2014, neuroscientists Paul Frankland and Sheena Josselyn ran an experiment that finally connected the dots, and it didn't start with humans at all. They worked with infant and adult mice. First, both groups were taught to associate a particular space with a memorable, mildly unpleasant event, the kind of experience that, in an adult mouse, reliably creates a lasting memory. As expected, the adult mice remembered it well days later. The infant mice forgot it almost immediately. Then came the clever part. The researchers artificially slowed down neurogenesis in the infant mice, reducing the flood of new cells pouring into their hippocampus. With that flood slowed, the infant mice's memories suddenly lasted far longer than they normally would have. Then they reversed it. In adult mice, where neurogenesis runs much slower, memories were normally stable for a long time. But when researchers artificially sped up neurogenesis in those adult mice, flooding their hippocampus with new cells the way an infant brain naturally is, older memories that should have stayed put began to vanish too. In other words, forgetting wasn't a glitch in the system. It was a direct, predictable consequence of how many new neurons were being wired in at any given time. The faster a brain builds itself, the faster its older memories get bumped out of the way. Now think about what that means for your own first few years. Your hippocampus wasn't failing to hold on to your second birthday, or your first trip to the beach, or the first time you saw snow. It was being renovated so aggressively, on such a tight schedule, that nothing could stay wired in place for long. Every new skill you picked up, walking, talking, recognizing faces, learning that a dropped object falls instead of floating, came bundled with a quiet cost. Older files got pushed aside to make room for the next one. This also explains something else. Why most people's earliest memories cluster not at birth, but somewhere around age 3 or 4. That's roughly when the explosive pace of hippocampal neurogenesis finally starts to slow down. Once the renovation crew thins out, memories finally get a chance to settle into place instead of being constantly displaced. There's one more wrinkle worth knowing. Many of the memories people believe are their earliest aren't really memories at all, not in the sense of a direct, replayed experience. Psychologist Elizabeth Loftus and others studying false memory have shown how easily early memories can actually be reconstructions, a mix of old photographs, family stories repeated at dinner tables, and other genuine memories stitched together until they feel like something you personally witnessed. Your brain isn't just losing files during this period. It's also quietly filling in gaps with secondhand material, and it rarely tells you which is which. And this isn't a uniquely human story, either. Infant amnesia and the burst of early life neurogenesis behind it shows up across many mammals, not just mice, but rats, monkeys, and humans alike. Whatever evolutionary pressure shaped this pattern took hold a very long time ago, and it stuck around because the trade-off must have been worth it. A brain that rebuilds itself fast and cheap, at the cost of its earliest records, may simply adapt to a new world faster than one that clings to everything but learns more slowly. So here's where this gets personal, because the process never fully switches off. Your hippocampus still produces new neurons today, not at the explosive rate it did when you were 2, but never at 0 either. Exercise increases the rate. Learning something genuinely new, like a language, an instrument, or even a new commute, increases it too. Sleep plays a role in deciding which connections get reinforced overnight and which quietly lose their place. Which means, in a much smaller way, the same process that erased your earliest years is still humming along in the background of your life right now. Most of your memories are sturdy enough to survive it. Your wedding day, your graduation, the day you got a pet. But the small ones, what you had for lunch 3 Tuesdays ago, the name of someone you met once at a party and never saw again. Those are the ones quietly getting nudged out of the filing cabinet to make space for whatever your brain is busy learning today. You're not just someone who lost their first few years of memory. You're someone whose brain is still, in a much smaller way, making that exact same trade every single day. So go back to that earliest memory you tried to recall at the very start of this. That gap before it isn't empty space in your story. It's a receipt, proof that your brain was under construction so fast for so long that nothing from before could survive the renovation. Becoming who you are cost you the record of who you were. And somewhere in your brain right now, that same machinery is quietly deciding which moment from today gets to stay and which one gets to go first.